Hi, welcome to another Petal Crafts Cake Art Academy tutorial. In this video, Kay Hartman will demonstrate how to make a gorgeous wedge heel shoe. Looking inside the wedge heel mold box, we will find a plastic wedge heel mold. Also included are inspirational photos of shoe variations. Next, we have detailed written instructions, and finally, plenty of pattern shapes for different shoe parts. So let's get started. First, wash and dry the mold. Next, use a sparse amount of high rational shortening on the inside of the mold to act as a release. Just a little, it avoids sticking. Kay will demonstrate using two different techniques. The first utilizes Rice Krispie squares. Then later, she'll use a product called Crayola Model Magic. Kay starts by firmly pressing pieces of Rice Krispie squares into the mold. You can use Kellogg's prepackaged squares or make your own using the recipe on the cereal box. She keeps adding bits and compacts them as she goes. She takes special care to fill any gaps. She turns the mold over and pushes out the finished form. At this point, the shape can be adjusted and modified to your liking. Any remaining holes or gaps can be filled with a pinch amount of the cereal mix. When she's happy with the shape, she will stick it in the refrigerator for 2 hours to firm it up. Next, Kay will demonstrate using Crayola Model Magic, a lightweight foam-like modeling product perfect for making a shoe form. Kay wipes the interior of the mold with shortening or petroleum jelly as a release. Although it's tempting, Kay recommends not making a solid form using just gum paste. It will be too heavy and dense. Kay kneads the Model Magic to loosen it up. She then pushes the Model Magic into the mold, filling it with smaller pieces when needed. She removes the excess material as she goes. Kay uses a rolling pin and a knife to adjust and trim the form. She uses her fingers and tools to smooth the Model Magic. She pushes, fills, or adjusts any gaps. Model Magic must be left in the mold to dry out. Depending on humidity and temperature, this may take several days. A big downside is this medium shrinks. Notice how much the finished piece on the right has shrunk compared to the new piece in the mold. Kay estimates the material shrinks about 25%. Cold porcelain is an air-dry, non-toxic clay-like medium. It is not edible. Although Kay will demonstrate using cold porcelain clay, the same techniques apply to gum paste. Kay looks through the shoe designs. She decides on the two-tone wedge shoe and then chooses the appropriate patterns. The first pattern she'll cut is for the side of the shoe. She cuts the pattern using scissors. Because the patterns are measured off the full-size mold, she will have to make adjustments to compensate for the shrinkage of the Model Magic. Notice the pattern should run from the center of the back to the center of the toe. Because the pattern is a little long, Kay folds the pattern at the toe. This avoids having to cut it and ruin the pattern. She rolls the cold porcelain clay with her hands to make a log shape. To make a flat sheet of suitable size, Kay uses a rolling pin. You can also use a pasta machine. She double checks to make sure the sheet is about the right size. To add texture detail, she's using a basket weave rolling pin. Texture mats can also be used. Slow, steady pressure when rolling gives the best impression. She applies a little shortening on a rolling cutter. This will keep the clay from sticking. She begins cutting the shape of her pattern. After checking to make sure the piece is the right size, Kay uses white glue diluted with water. She brushes the side of the wedge bottom from the back to the front. She carefully places the cutout piece into position. She double checks to make sure that both surfaces are bonded with the glue. She uses a little extra glue when necessary. The excess clay is trimmed with scissors. The back is cut straight from top to bottom. All the steps are repeated for the opposite side. Once the sides are dried, she chooses and cuts a soul-shaped pattern that fits. It's not unusual to have to make adjustments in the shape of your pattern to fit your forms. Kay rolls and flattens more cold porcelain clay and trims it to the shape of the pattern. She applies more glue to the sole form. You can use a larger brush to speed up the process. She attaches the sole shape onto the form and rubs it with a rolling pin to bond it securely into position. The sole shape was a little small at first. Kay was able to flatten and stretch it with the rolling pin until it was the perfect fit. Kay then trims off the excess with a knife. The piece is then left to dry. Kay uses this photo as an inspiration. She will use elements of the shoe, but not completely copy the design. She will add her own modifications and details. The piece that goes between the toes, the thong, will be anchored into the area using a small hole. This is made with either a paintbrush handle or a pointed tool. She makes a thin sausage shape from cold porcelain clay. After cutting it to the correct length, She uses a tool and some glue to hold it into place. Next, she fashions a rope shape for the sides. She's got to be very careful to make sure that it's uniform and consistent in size. A little glue is painted on and the rope is bonded into position. The ends are trimmed so they come together evenly. The pieces are then glued into place. After making sure it is securely glued down and in place, she flattens it slightly with the rolling pin. Next, Kay uses the bell-shaped patterns for the back part of the shoe. She cuts out the pattern and double checks it for size. She uses a sheet of clay that has been rolled flat to copy the pattern. She brushes on diluted white glue. Then carefully attaches it in place. She uses her hands to round it out and to shape it. Next, Kay cuts a 1-inch strip from a rolled piece of clay. She tapers the end with her knife, making it pointed. She uses a plastic shoe last former to position it into place. She glues the tip to the thong piece. Kay makes another strip of clay and textures it with the rolling pin. She cuts the sides even and straight, about 1 inch wide. She glues the strip into place as she wraps it around. She cuts off the excess. Both ends should meet straight in the back. She trims the excess from the top part of the strap. She rolls out another piece of clay and then adds texture with a textured rolling pin. Once again, she trims the sides, making it about 1 inch thick. She applies glue, and after trimming it a little more, makes it into a loop shape on the back of the shoe. The glued piece is pressed into position. Kay uses a rubber silicone mold to fabricate buttons. She smears a thin coat of shortening into the mold so the clay won't stick to it. The clay is then kneaded and pushed into the mold cavity. The excess clay on top is cut flat and trimmed away with a knife. She repeats this process until she has 4 buttons. She places the buttons on the strap without glue to check the design. Kay uses a sole pattern to fashion a partial sole shape. This piece can be textured with a rolling pin or a texture mat. A stitching wheel is used near the edge to look like threaded stitching. A 1" by 3½ strip is added as a padding underneath the sole shape. After the shoe dries, the shoe last former is removed. Next, the under padding is glued to the partial sole's bottom side. Both pieces are glued into place onto the shoe. The pieces are gently rubbed with the fingers to allow a good glue bond. To paint the button, Kay uses gel paste food coloring. Kay uses an old scruffy brush to dab color into every nook and cranny and crevice of the button. A darker color is recommended for the stage. For the top paint, Kay uses a 24-karat gold luster dust mixed with a little clear alcohol, like vodka or gin, to form a paste-like consistency. Kay's technique is to blot the excess gold paint off the brush until it is fairly dry. She uses just a little paint at a time, just covering the outermost fine detail. The darker paint should contrast, allowing the detail to really show through. Kay finishes painting the rest of the buttons. Kay uses 2 different button designs to run up the front strap. Next, Kay will add more paint to the other parts of the shoe. She uses the darker paint on the other straps, really working the color into the depths of the detail. She then again uses the gold paint lightly brushed over the detail. She adds more gold paint to the outline of the shoe. The buttons are glued into place. Notice how 2 colors add dimension to the details of the parts. One last button and the shoe is completed. Have fun creating your own. Experiment with designs, textures, paint colors, and accessories.